"This cabin doesn't belong here. You need to move out." That's what they said to my face, as if I was some trespasser on my own land. And I'll tell you, nothing prepares you for that gut punch. Standing on the ground you paid for, heart rattling in your chest, realizing the people with the fancy rules and clipped hedges can act like they own not just their lives, but yours too. One minute, I was living the quiet dream. The next, I had letters shoved in my mailbox. Environmental compliance, threats, neighbors who used to wave now just squinting through their curtains. Let me back up a sec. 3 years ago, I bought myself 12 acres of heaven. Rolling hills, big oaks, the kind of wildflower meadow that makes you feel like you finally outran the city for good. Not a gift, not an inheritance. Every penny was saved over 20 years as a forest ranger, chasing wildfires, drawing property lines, dealing with other people's land messes. I thought I'd seen it all. Turns out, you're never done learning the ways people fight over dirt. I built that cabin with my own hands. 2 years of sawdust weekends, sore arms, sunburnt neck, permits pulled, codes checked, everything done by the book, right down to the last nail. Old habits die hard. I knew the difference between a foundation that lasts and one that just looks good on Instagram. I was proud of that place, and every morning brought me back to why I did it. Birds arguing in the trees, sunlight through pines, the kind of peace nobody can buy. For a while, my only company was the wind and the occasional woodpecker. The Willowbrook Estates HOA went up on the other side of the property line about the same time I finished. At first, it was just Mrs. Patterson waving from her porch, kids hollering, "Nice truck," as I rumbled down my driveway. They seemed to like having a real woodsman next door. Even Deborah Finch, the HOA president, invited me to a barbecue once or twice. I always laughed it off. Sure, if I can bring my chainsaw. But truth was, I'd had enough of meetings and committees for one lifetime. But something changed. The waves turned into stares, then whispers, then nothing at all. Mrs. Patterson started crossing the street to avoid my gate. People paused in their evening walks, voices dropping when I came into earshot. You could feel it in the air, like smoke before a wildfire. I should have known. The most heated disputes aren't about who's breaking the rules. They're about who interprets them, or who just plain doesn't fit the picture. There was this old iron marker in the brush near my boundary, half swallowed by moss. Never thought much of it. My cabin was a good 200 feet from that line, tucked in for morning sun, sheltered by pines. The HOA houses, all neat and matching, sat in their own world, separated by the invisible wall of property rights and community standards. My old Ford truck looked out of place next to their shiny imports, but it never once failed to start. For months, I had my routine. Projects in the morning, town runs in the afternoon, evenings with a book or just watching the sun slip behind the trees. It felt earned. I kept my head down, figured if I didn't bother anyone, they'd leave me alone. But the warning signs were there. More cars slowing by my driveway, neighbors stiff at the grocery store, conversations that stopped when I showed up. Comfort made me slow. I forgot that when folks feel threatened, even by nothing more than someone who lives different, trouble's brewing. Then came the knock. Deborah Finch, perfectly pressed blazer, business smile, clipboard tucked under one arm, introduced herself like she was about to sell me a timeshare. She wouldn't come in, wanted to stand on the porch so she could see the lay of the land. She complimented the wildflowers, then slid right into county planning, new environmental initiatives, and this glossy pamphlet about community wildlife preservation standards. Apparently, my cabin was a visual intrusion on their habitat corridor. I asked to see the assessment. She had pages of technical language, most of it still preliminary, but made it clear, bring your cabin into compliance or face escalating impact fees. 30 days, or else. I asked her, point blank, what authority the HOA had over land outside their boundaries. Deborah gave me the laws are complicated routine, that wildlife doesn't recognize property lines, and they'd worked with county officials to draw up regional standards. Her advisory notice looked official as hell, but it didn't feel right. I'd seen this playbook before, in a dozen little power games back in my Ranger days. That night, with her documents spread out on my kitchen table, it hit me. This wasn't about the environment. It was about control. Someone had decided my cabin didn't fit their vision. What they didn't know was I'd learned to read between the lines, and I wasn't about to roll over. The next day, I started digging. Years back, when I poured the foundation, I'd found a strange hollow in one post, like someone hid something inside. Turns out, there was a sealed tube jammed into the concrete. Old maps, letters, records. The previous owner, Harold Morrison, had documented a boundary dispute with the original developer. His letters talked about Pine Street being built too far into what was, legally, still private land, my land. He'd planned to sue, but he died before he could. I needed help. The county clerk, Patricia, pulled my file and confirmed a history of complaints and conflicting surveys. That's when I met Elise Monroe, real estate attorney, ex-corporate, now specializing in exactly this kind of mess. She took one look at Morrison's documents and nearly jumped out of her chair. "This is a pattern," she said, "and you just found the missing link." If her analysis was right, that shiny development had squatted across my boundaries, not just Pine Street, but several houses as well. When I brought it up at the next friendly meeting with Deborah and her board at the local cafe, full crowd, everyone pretending not to listen but dying to hear, I let them see the map. Their faces said it all. They kept pushing their environmental line, but you could feel the ground shifting under their feet. I wasn't just some crank with a grievance anymore. I had proof. I told them, politely, that I'd be hiring a surveyor, and their compliance issues could wait until we knew who actually owned what. After that, things got ugly in ways only small towns can be. Whispers in the hardware store, neighbors who used to smile now turning cold. The rumor mill had me pegged as the guy suing the whole neighborhood, driving down property values. Meanwhile, I got a surprise county inspection, 2 hours of poking and prodding, and not a thing out of order. Someone was pulling strings, hoping to find dirt. They didn't. The twist came from the most unlikely place. Jennifer Walsh, the HOA secretary, cornered me in the grocery store and quietly admitted, "Not everyone's on board with Deborah. There were issues with the boundaries before we moved in, and some of us don't like what's happening to you." She tipped me off that more people were questioning the official story. That night, I wrote an anonymous letter, spelled out the facts about Pine Street and the real history, and dropped it in Willowbrook mailboxes. Within days, the narrative started shifting. People whispered about what the HOA might be hiding. Some even started talking to me again. But the county doubled down, 48 hours to submit a compliance plan or face property seizure. Elise, my attorney, called in Marcus Webb, a surveyor with drone tech and a talent for digging up buried truth. With Morrison's map and Webb's aerial scans, we confirmed it. Pine Street and 3 houses were sitting on my land, and the wildlife zone sign was planted 30 feet inside my property. Then, out of nowhere, Robert Hayes, the HOA treasurer, reached out. He'd reviewed the development's old records and found rejected easement applications, sketchy approvals, and, here's the kicker, forgeries. Some boundary documents were created after the fact with fake signatures. Joe Marshall, a retired vet from the neighborhood, joined us too. Turns out, not everyone was comfortable with Deborah's scorched earth tactics. We'd formed an unlikely alliance. The ranger, the treasurer, and the veteran, all united by a shared sense that something was deeply wrong. The county hearing was a circus. The room was packed. Willowbrook folks, townies, you name it. Deborah's lawyer threw every environmental violation argument in the book. Elise calmly showed the drone maps, the old records, the forgeries. Robert stood up and dropped the bomb. The HOA's legal foundation was compromised, their key documents forged. The room erupted. County officials paused the hearing, came back visibly shaken, and suspended all compliance actions against me. They ordered a formal investigation into Willowbrook's development history. It was vindication, but also a heavy weight. I'd exposed the truth, but now dozens of families faced uncertainty about their homes. I'd won the battle, but the war was bigger than me. Over the next months, things changed. The county designated my land the Morrison Heritage Zone, a nod to the man whose paperwork started it all. Willowbrook voted Robert in as their new HOA president. We negotiated a real easement for Pine Street. Jennifer organized the pine boundary ceremony, neighbors planting oak trees along the line that once divided us. Funny thing is, the place became more of a community than ever. I started leading nature walks for Willowbrook families. Kids asked about animal tracks. Parents asked about sustainable gardens. Mrs. Patterson, who'd once avoided my gate, now joined every Saturday walk, apologizing for the gossip. Elise used our story to teach other towns about resolving disputes without burning bridges. Now, some evenings, I sit on my porch, watch the lights come on across the meadow, and realize I don't feel like an outsider anymore. The boundary line that nearly tore us apart is now just a row of saplings, growing a little taller every year. Maybe one day nobody will remember there was ever a fight, just that the neighbors here found a way to share the same patch of earth. And that's the thing. The best victories aren't about proving someone wrong, but about building something stronger on the other side. If you've ever had to draw a line or erase one, or if you've ever had to turn suspicion into trust, I'd love to hear your story down below. What would you have done? Have you ever found yourself fighting not just for your land, but for your right to belong? If this tale kept you company tonight, a kind word means more than you know. Take care, and may your neighbors always knock before they step in, but never forget to open the door when they do.